Welcome to the video on how fossils form, or you could also call this every fossil tells a story. And whilst rocks can tell us about climate, about where the seas were, about major sort of events like meteorite strikes, whether a place once was a river, whether it was a sea, whether it was eroding, fossils tell us about life. And we have this thing in science called the fossil record. And if you think of all the animals and plants and bacteria and all of those things that have ever lived, we only get little snapshots in the fossils that we can find to help us unpack and unravel what life was actually like on Earth. And the fossils can also help us date the rocks. So there's lots of different reasons why fossils are quite useful to paleontologists. So a paleontologist is someone who studies fossils. Now, most animals, plants, etc. get eaten or they decay and they absolutely leave no trace behind whatsoever. Just occasionally, in very particular circumstances, the remains actually can get preserved or fossilised. Now, usually that is the hard parts of the animal because, as you can imagine, the soft parts literally decay away and are very rarely preserved. I'm going to just take you to a website called the Burgess Shale, which is a place it's in Canada, and I'll just hang on a second and I'll take my screen there. Okay, this particular fossil bed is called the Burgess Shale, and I think I might have said it's in Canada. And for some reason, which was probably the fact that the fossils got buried really quickly without oxygen, vast amounts of fossils were preserved here that didn't have bones, so soft-bodied organisms. And it's really old too. Do you remember in the rocks video, Cambrian life? That was way back, over 2.5 billion years ago. So it's some of the very first life that we know. I just want to encourage you, if you are interested, if you do any kind of Google search on Burgess Shale, you will get an enormous amount of extraordinarily cool looking fossils. So these are just some examples, and I'm not even sure if they're the best ones, but they're different because even if you look at this, like that is not a skeleton, okay? That is the soft part, right, of that particular organism, and it makes them extraordinarily rare. So check that out for an unusual, fossil site. So just back to this, most of the fossils we find are the hard parts of the fossil simply because they're much more durable and tough and will literally last the test of time. So if you have a look at this image, it's just sort of a timeline of the possibilities. Okay, not always, just a general timeline of how something might turn into a fossil. The animal dies, it gets covered really quickly, and you'll notice that the soft tissue's already gone here and you've ended up with the skeleton. So this is why we often have the hard parts. This was buried in water which would have had sediment in it. So over time, literally millions of years I'm talking about here, not just like a week, the sediment builds up in layers and that fossil is hidden all the way down there. And even after some more time, see, it's sort of squashed a bit, it's lost a bit of its original shape. And then a period of erosion happens. So maybe it's a mountainside or whatever has washed away because of wind and rain, and it revealed over time it revealed a bone. And then you've got some interested scientists here digging it up, and you'll see that it hasn't moved in this example. It's just down there, but all the top has weathered away to reveal the fossil underneath. Sometimes the fossils are footprints, and we call them trace fossils. You may know of one down at Inverloch where there's a big footprint of a dinosaur in the rocks down at the place called the Caves. So, just as the name suggests, these are not the feet of the dinosaur. They are the footprints of a dinosaur or a bird. I'm not really even sure what that is. Here are some other trace fossils which I found that were really interesting. This one is poo. right? Dinosaur dung, fossilized dinosaur dung. Again, it's a trace of that animal's existence. Here's a really cool one of a plant leaf. So it's left the impression of that leaf in the rock. And this one, I really was amazed by this when I found it, is a skin imprint of a dinosaur called a hadrosaur. So all of these are evidence of dinosaurs, not just the bones. And lastly, sometimes you find teeth. And teeth are remarkably durable. Have a look at these. These are huge. Great white sharks are big. These are twice the size of them. And the Melbourne Museum has some of them in there. So just a learning opportunity for your family or your friends to pop off to the Melbourne Museum for a visit, and you'll see some really fantastic fossils in there. I'll let you now go. You've got a learning activity which is on Simon today, or whenever you're watching this video, which are some questions about fossils and an article to read on a very recent fossil find in Victoria.